All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to change this up and share my screen so we can get our PowerPoint going. All right. This is not integrated as awesomely as I think it could be, but who asked me? So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our gathering tonight, From Motivation to Perseverance. Just want to check in with everybody first. How are you doing? And I think it's going to kick me off my my PowerPoint here. But how are you doing this week? We just got our stay-at-home order extended another 30 days or more. So thoughts, feelings about that? I think if we're watching the news and the science around it, it seems like it's pretty not surprising that it was extended. And you know, our safety is first. All right. So where did my? There we go. Let me see what we're saying here. Doing well. Good. Good. Getting kind of into the swing of it. Good. I wanted to talk about motivation tonight because of it's just an interesting concept that I hear about from people who come in to work with me a lot, and motivation isn't what we think it is. So I wanted to kind of give us a different view of what motivation is. So when we're doing activities or changes during this time, that we know what we're dealing with on the inside. And I thought this was a really good example of how motivation only takes us so far. You know, like maybe when we first had to stay home, and we could see this around our country, around the world, that people got into action and made it possible for people to stay home. And, you know, the schools teaching classes online and people being able to work from home. And, you know, all of these things got into place really fast. And we all have been kind of keeping our time until then. And then there's this kind of, at least I've heard from some people, there's been kind of this uproar of like, oh my gosh, I can't take another month of this. And, you know, then we start kind of some people start kind of questioning it, like, why do we have to do this? Is it really that unsafe? You know, and all of those questions because of that, you know, stir craziness. It's like, I've done this much, why do I have to keep going? And really, sometimes when we're working on a behavioral change, or we're working on a goal that we've set for ourselves that may feel sometimes a little bit bigger than what we bargained for as we're working towards it, you know, why don't we feel that excitement for it all the time? So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. You know, I get people who come into me who say, you know, I don't have any motivation. And, you know, I always kind of go, uh-oh, because I can't give anybody motivation. That is, I don't know how to do that. But if we understand what's happening on the inside, we can foster that motivation within ourselves. So, so what I want to do first is talk about motivation in the brain, just very briefly. So motivation, we used to think, or motivation comes from our dopamine, and dopamine we used to think was like our pleasure center, and you know, the things that bring us pleasure create dopamine in the brain, and that's a little bit true still, but dopamine is really about action, and where dopamine shows up in the brain depends on what action we take or we don't take, right? So where goes the dopamine, so goes the action or the inaction. So in high achievers, or, you know, medium achievers even, the most of their dopamine is in the striatum and prefrontal cortex. So the striatum, you can see, is above the three little forked arrows there, and which is near the amygdala and the emotional brain, right? Which also, and then the prefrontal cortex is called frontal cortex in the picture, but that is our executive functioning. And the striatum has to do with our movement, and it gives the body messages to take action. Okay, so in high achievers, their dopamine is fueling their rational mind and their executive function, which manages our tasks and our organization, and it's also going to that part that puts us into action around those. So those two pieces in our brain are working together. So no wonder, people get things done that way. Okay. So in slackers, in this article that I was looking at, they call them slackers, but in, when we don't feel that motivation and we don't feel like we want to do something, the dopamine goes to the anterior insula. So you can see the kind of the blue blob in the middle that is labeled insula. That is where the dopamine is going. And the anterior insula is involved in risk management, and it has to do with our basic emotions. So it's that voice that says, I don't wanna, and here's all the reasons why I don't wanna. Why should I try? It's the voice that is connected to our emotions and all the reasons why we don't want to move and do the thing that we're saying that we want to do. So there's part of our brain saying we want to do this, and then it's working against the anterior insula that says, man, I don't really want to do it. So, okay. So in short, when the dopamine goes to the reward center, which is the prefrontal cortex, makes it feel really good, and the result is that we feel more motivated. But when our dopamine is going to that risk management area or that emotional part of us, we feel less motivated because there's all these reasons why. So let me talk about this a little bit. Whenever we're making a change within ourselves, we are going against what we were like before. We're going against the mental habit that we had before. So if you can think of it as electricity wired to the old behavior, and feeding that old behavior, when we are making a change, we have to go against the wiring of the old behavior. So we have to unplug from the old behavior and plug it into the new behavior. And that's a large effort. You think of rewiring a house, or rewiring a light fixture even, that you have to unplug the old light fixture and make sure all the wires are working, and then plug it into the new wires into the new light fixture. That's what we're doing in the brain. So there's a lot of electrical momentum that is going into that old behavior that we have to work energetically inside of us and with our self-talk and all of that to make sure it's going into the new behavior and not falling back into the old behavior. So our little risk manager in there is going through all the reasons why that's a lot of work. Why do I want to do that? Maybe this new thing isn't safe. And so there's a lot of little talking going on in there that is telling us maybe we don't want to do that after all. So we're really working against ourselves when we're making a change in that old wiring. If you can think about it as working against old wiring, then it can make sense, and it's not so daunting, right? So a few dopamine hacks. So we want the feeling around our changes to go to our reward center, not to the emotional brain, because the emotional brain is going to say, man, that's what's in it for me, right? So when we record small accomplishments, that is going to our reward center. So it's helping kind of redirect that dopamine, if you will. Crossing things off a list creates dopamine that's going to that prefrontal cortex area, and it is feeding, wow, this feels really good. So then we want to do more of that, and there's kind of that addictive part of dopamine, right? Where it's like, oh, this feels good. I want to do more of it, right? So, we can share our results or accomplishments with other people, and that feels really good. We get positive feedback, we get smiles, we get way to goes, and that feels good. Giving yourself a deadline to achieve a change or a task can feel really good, kind of compete with yourself around it, you know, assuming you get it done. Maybe if it doesn't get done, then it doesn't feel so good. But focusing on how you feel when the task is done helps to manage that cost benefit anterior insula part that is going, well, I'm not really sure if this is a good idea, and it tries to talk you out of it. But if you focus on, yeah, but here's what it's going to feel like when it's done, it can kind of help to move that dopamine into that reward center ahead of time before you complete it. Healthy diet is always good because our dopamine is fed by our diet, also our healthy foods, our serotonin, which is our mood stabilizer to a certain extent, most of our serotonin is created in our gut. So when our gut is healthy, then our mood is affected, and it's better too, which is also feels good and increases our dopamine. Exercise does increase dopamine as well, and creativity, doing something that is rewarding just because it's we're creating something. But the deal is, as I said earlier, motivation only takes us so far, because we have that excitement about it, but you know, if it goes on and on, or it takes longer than we would like it to take, then you know that our reward center isn't getting fed quite as much as it was in the beginning. So we have to keep going even when we don't want to, and we have to keep going especially when we don't want to, if we want to accomplish our task. A few years ago, I was doing a class on taking a spiritual step, and I was thinking there's got to be, I want a visual for this. I want a formula for this. So I created this little handmade formula with the help of a computer, because these are the steps of any kind of change that we're making. I use it for a spiritual step, but it can be anything that you're doing. It can be a, you know, if you're making a commitment to yourself to change your diet, or to exercise more, or to, you know, clean out that closet while you have this time, or connect with those people while you have this time. Anything that you want to be doing that maybe is easy to put off, this is the process that you will go through. So this is good for right now as we tolerate another 4 to 6 weeks and who knows what beyond that, but it's also good for any time. So our commitment, that first part of that process, is when we commit to our new idea. What is it that we want? Oh my gosh, it's so great. I'm going to get up every day and go for a walk for an hour and just enjoy the day, and you know, rain or shine, I'm just going to bundle up and do it. Okay, great. Well, that feels really good when we first start that out, because it's our new idea, and it's opening up our minds, and that feels good to us. It feels good to have our perception stretched a little bit, so we feel that motivation. We can see the rewards of it, so that prefrontal cortex is getting fed, and that striatum is getting fed the dopamine, so that we go, yeah, I want to do this, and this is what I'm going to do, and we're awesome at it for 3 days, and then it's like, oh, this is hard. Maybe we're good at it for 3 weeks, but at some point that dopamine kind of settles down, and we come up on the next part of this, which is resistance. So our resistance comes from our subconscious patterns. And if we go back to that image that I was talking about earlier, where it's electrical wiring, that electrical wiring was wired to the old behavior, and we need to wire it into the new behavior. Well, our brain-body system is a status quo system. It likes to maintain what is, and it doesn't like to deviate from that, and yet it does, because we're also wired to grow and change and express and be curious and explore. But then there's that wiring that says, yeah, but I've been doing it this way for a long time, and there's no reason for me not to do it this way anymore. And so we have this resistance that's kind of wired in place And that's where the most work comes. And that's where we can, that's where we need to persevere in our commitment. But that's also where, as we work through that, we are generating that dopamine. We are generating that perseverance and that motivation to keep going. You know, I'm thinking of a time where my family and I were vacationing in the Badlands in South Dakota, and we were kind of running up and down the hills, and I fell down and I skinned my knee like really badly. I was like a teenager, I was probably 14, 15, maybe I was older, I don't remember. But anyway, I skinned my knee really badly. And so I ran back to the trailer where my mom was, and I was crying because I was, well, it hurt, but I was crying because I was so mad because I felt like I am not going to be conquered by a bunch of rocks. So my mom helped me patch myself up, and I went back and I went back on the rocks, and I'm like, I am in charge. I am in charge here. And so that was my motivation, because I could have, with that risk manager inside of me, I could have gone, wow, that was scary and that hurt. And maybe my goal to feel the freedom, because I remember just wanting to kind of climb all over, and that freedom that I felt as I was hiking, I wanted that. But that risk manager could have jumped in and said, you want that, but look, you were bleeding all the way down your leg and it hurt, and now you're crying about it, come on, is it really worth it? And I just was not having any of that. And that's that power and that force that we have to have in order to push back that resistance that comes up. Also, the resistance step is beautiful because it's going to bring up anything that's stuck inside of us that's standing in our way of reaching our commitment. So we want to know those things, because if we don't know those things, they're going to keep getting in our way. So we want to be really listening. Our resistance step is where all the work is. It's where our journaling is if we need to do that. It's where watching our patterns and paying attention to what's inside and what the voice is saying, the resistance voice is saying, and what story is it telling us that is keeping us stuck in the old behavior when we want to be moving to the new behavior. So as we keep working with that and pushing through that, we are weakening that old wiring and strengthening the new wiring, because our will is driving that new wiring to put that into place and withdrawing it from the old behavior. And in the brain, if wiring isn't getting used, it disappears. And that energy, that electricity going from the old nerve cells to the new nerve cells, those connections dissolve, and the energy is then used to maintain and sustain the new connections. And so that's what's happening in that strengthening part. And then we feel that triumph when we don't even think about the old behavior anymore. It's just not like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to do that. I remember when I used to bite my fingernails or sit on the couch instead of going for a walk. I don't even know that person anymore. Who was that? I don't know. And it feels good. And then we've got that new surge of dopamine. And then, we have insights and new understanding about ourselves through the process. And then it starts over, because we are always stretching and growing and creative beings. So we are going to come up with another commitment and keep moving and keep growing in that respect. So I see some questions popping up here, so I'm going to check out what y'all are saying. All right. Okay. Yeah, we're having a major reset right now. So these are some comments from before. Yes. So in organizational communication, we use awareness, acceptance, understanding, commitment, action, and have to experience the first four to get the action. Yes. Yeah. So between our first thought of here's what I want to be doing and the action, there can be a lot of steps also, which we're going to talk about next. Inner talk, feelings, and struggle can be likened to an autoimmune disorder of thought and feeling, going back and forth between wanting to be curious, take action, saying yes to risk, and not so fast because of all the old memories that surface, all the old behaviors. Absolutely, absolutely, excellent. All right, so let's go to our next one here. So what I would like for you to do right now is pick one change, goal, or task that you know, since we have another 30 days at home and we've got more, you know, theoretically more time on our hands before we kind of figure out what our new life is going to be like, you know, think of one thing that you would like to do during this time. Maybe it's something you've always wanted to do, maybe it's a new idea, but think of it right now and write it down. You know, I was hearing a lot this last week of people, I don't know if upset is the right word, but annoyed about, you know, what if I don't want to use my shelter in place time to, you know, paint my house or create something or learn how to make kombucha, which I tried, and that's probably isn't happening in my house, but you know, what if I don't want to do that? Why is there so much pressure to do that? And as I was reading that, what struck me is like, well, if we're doing that so that if our motivation is doing that so that the reward is that we're measuring up to other people, that will always fail, right? Because that's not an internal motivation, that's an external motivation. So for this goal, this change, this experience is about you. What do you want for you? You know, when during this time, it's not about who can be the most Martha Stewart. This is about who can it's not a competition, right? It's about what do I need for me? What do I need for me? What have I been saying? Oh yeah, I got to do that someday. Oh yeah, I got to do that someday. Oh, I really want to change this about myself. That's what we're looking for. This is about you and only you. It's not about Facebook. It's not about Instagram. This is about you. So write it down right now, and then list steps that you need to take to move towards it. What do you need to do? Break it down into little steps. Number one, I need to wake up in the morning and get my tennis shoes on, and maybe I need to change up my routine a little bit. You know, I know I do better in the morning if I do my exercise before I drink my coffee, but I really like drinking my coffee first thing in the morning. But my day actually, I am learning in the last 30 days, my day goes better if I do my exercise first, which is really annoying, but you know, maybe I will have to incorporate that a little bit more, especially as the weather warms up and I want to be outside. So anyway, so what do you have to do in order to take steps? What are the steps towards it? What do you have to stop doing? Here's what we don't like sometimes is, you know, okay, well, I have to stop sitting down at the table and drinking my coffee because then I go on my computer and then I start answering emails. And then I think, oh, here's the other thing I need to do. Like my son had mentioned a few weeks ago, like, Mom, you are the most, I don't remember what he said now. I shared it a few weeks ago, but you get more done than anybody I know or something like that. And yeah, the downside of that is that I can forget about myself. You know, I can get my emails done, but then not go for my walk or something. So I have to keep my computer closed, turn my coffee on later, and be there for myself, do my exercises. So think of the things that you have to stop doing also, as well as the things that you have to do towards that process. And then take the first step. What does the first step look like? Can you picture yourself doing that first step? And picture yourself and how it feels to already have your task or your goal completed. If your goal is to walk every day, feel what that would feel like. Get in touch with the body sensations of the invigoration of walking around your neighborhood or wherever you go to walk, and feel the fresh air in your lungs as you breathe in, and feel the blue sky for the days that our sky is blue, and that strong body and, whatever those sensory things that are around that come up for you. Feel what it feels like to already have accomplished it. And then the final step for this first part, which is commitment, is watch for the resistance. It's a given. And if you watch for it, then when it comes up, you go, oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you. I got this. I'm prepared for you. But what happens is that we want that fresh, motivated feeling to carry us through to the end. And let me tell you what, if it did, we wouldn't grow, because it's that perseverance through times that are difficult, and not just situations, but when we're challenging ourselves to do something, that perseverance is what grows us, because we're also having to look at old behaviors that don't work anymore. So if you're prepared for the resistance, it's not so bad in a couple of senses. It's not so bad because it's not surprising, but it's not so bad because then you don't turn it on yourself and start blaming yourself, which is another thing that can happen too, which is like, oh, I'm not motivated to do it anymore. There must be something wrong with me. I'm lazy. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times I hear, I'm just lazy. And you know what? Yes, lazy is out there. But if we look at the resistance that's coming up, we'll find, oh, I've got this, well, we're going to talk about this next anyway, but I've got this critical parent in my head. And if I start trying something new, it's going to start yapping at me and telling me, I'll never get it done. Oh, you've done this before. You've tried this before, and you're not good at it. And you gave up 50 other times. What makes you think you're not going to give up this time? And blah, all of that yucky programming that's in there. And so when that starts coming up, that's the resistance, right? That's just resistance. That's all it is. But what happens is we don't see it that way, and so we take it on as true about ourselves, which is so sad because it's not true about ourselves. What's true about ourselves is that we can do whatever we set our minds to do within reason, and we can't do that without dealing with our false beliefs and critical voices that are coming up along with that process. So let me check in with you guys here. Yes, somebody has my coffee habit. Guided mindfulness meditation. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's great. So when we just stick with things, we have those accomplishments, and we have those moments of success that feel so good, and that's our motivation to keep going, is our success, right? Our moving through it to the other side is something that definitely feeds our motivation. All right. So when we're looking at the resistance, we want to look at them as parts of us, right? Not all of us. So, like the lazy comment that I was making earlier, what happens is that a lot of people, when they don't stick with their commitment to themselves, they just write it off as I'm lazy. Well, that's an easy thing to, if I'm lazy, then I don't really have to do anything. And I believe that about myself, then I'm off the hook. I don't have to do a darn thing because, hey, I'm lazy. But that's not usually what's going on. What's going on is usually under the surface. What else is going on? So what I like to do is to help break that resistance apart into smaller pieces, and find out what voices are talking in my head, what false wiring is talking in my head. So the part of me that wants, and the part of you that wants to keep your commitment, is your present day adult self. You can call it higher self, you can call it your wise self, whatever you want to call it. It's your conscious part of you that can see the benefits of the commitment that you're making. It's the one that can kind of see, like, hey, I know I would feel better if I went for a walk an hour every day, and I have the time to do it now, so why not? I know what I need to do in the morning to make that happen, or in the evening, or mid-afternoon, or whatever. You know, it's got the dopamine and the prefrontal cortex figuring out, oh yeah, this is how I can make this work. And the striatum that's helping with the action motivation part of that as well. It's above a 5 if you remember the spiritual thermometer. This is a part of us that sees what commitment to make and it wants to do it. It's the part that wants to do it. So then what part of you doesn't want to do it? Maybe it's a fearful part, a self-critical, rebellious. Oh, that's a fun one that people don't really see very much. You know, the fear sometimes is easier to see than the, yeah, screw it, I just don't want to do it. So that's that interior insula of the cost benefit, but it's skewed because our emotions feel in our bodies. We've talked about this a little bit before. Emotions feel in our bodies bigger than the little tiny thought that's causing them. So, you know, a little fearful part, like, ooh, what if I go out and people aren't wearing masks? Oh, I better just stay home then. You know, that's a little bitty voice that can generate fear that feels bigger than it needs to be. So we want to know, okay, I'm feeling fear. What am I feeling fear around? And let me break that down, because once again, we've talked about this before, right? When we name it, we can tame it. So we want to name these voices in our head that are trying to talk us out of our goal. It's the emotional parts. Okay, it's the emotional false beliefs that are going on in there. All right. All right, so we've got some good feedback here. Okay. So yeah, so other people involved in our house can make it so that make it hard to do our commitment too, right? And that's definitely something we have to negotiate with other people. A lot of self-soothing going on right now. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, there's a lot of stress in the air. There's a lot of stress about not knowing what's next and what's happening. That's the fearful part, right? The fearful part is, well, what am I going to do? And how do I do it? And, you know, what if so-and-so in the household gets mad if I start changing my behavior? You know, and then you can have a conversation with that person and they can agree or not agree. But if they don't agree, then that's information, right? Okay, this person doesn't agree that, you know, I'm going out for an hour walk every day. Well, thank you for sharing, but I'm may end up doing that anyway. Or, you know, they're being able to communicate about it to a certain extent. That might be another webinar, right? But, you know, negotiate those things. Part of being able to plot out what steps you have to take can help you think about all the influences around you that are going to affect what you have to do to make your goal happen, right? And I like to say there's always a solution, and I call it the third option, right? So there's yes, and then there's no, but there's always something in there that's a yeah, but what about this? You know, and to get things out on paper, to write down your steps and write down all the influences that you have, because maybe it's not just you that this decision or this commitment or this change will affect. Maybe it's other people around you. So write it down. Who is going to be affected by my change? And are those changes positive? And them not liking it is not an excuse, because people, I mean, often don't like it when we change ourselves, because then they have to change too, right? And it's not their choice. So they don't always like to have to change when it's not their choice. So, you know, so you'll have to work with that. And that's part of the resistance and looking at that as well. How do you get over those things that get in your way and make it easy to not feel that commitment? Well, again, this is about feeling the commitment, and that's motivation. And it's not always about feeling the commitment. It's about committing to yourself to do it anyway, even when you don't feel that. Sorry for that noise. That's my little puppy-doo who's having some breathing issues. But so this is what this whole webinar is about, because that perseverance is doing it when we don't want to, and doing it when we don't feel like it, because we really remember our emotions for the most part are below a 5 on that spiritual thermometer, and that's not where we're in clear think. So we can be aware of our emotions, and that's why I'm saying, what is the emotion I'm feeling, and what is it saying, and what is the part of that is talking in my brain saying, so that I can do something about it rather than just letting it control me. And the emotional part comes up and says, yeah, but I don't feel like it today. And we say, okay, you know. So sorry, my dog is asking to go outside. So I know somebody is listening who can help me with that. Anyway, so the joy of working from home. What can we say? So anyway, so we listened to that part. Thank you. We listened to that part and find out what it's saying, so that we can get back in our rational mind and say, okay, I understand that, but we're going to do it anyway. Or here's a solution around that. I know, and actually, let me go ahead and go to the next slide, because that has to do with this as well. So we listen to each part with objectivity, like a parent, like a kind, loving, healthy, nurturing parent would listen. We listen to each part. We listen to the voice with objectivity. And we talked about that 3-step process of, what is the emotion I'm feeling? What is the emotion saying? What's the story that the emotion is saying? And what's a new perception I can take that will help me through that, will help me to the other side of that? And we do that with compassion and objectivity. And when we can do that, oftentimes when we look at it, we can see so much easier, what do I need to do to get through this emotion, when we can name it and hear the story behind it. Then we can do something about it. But if we just go, oh yeah, that feels hard and emotional, then we'll stop, and we'll stop there. But we can't. That's not perseverance. We can't stop there. And you know, who doesn't want to not go on a walk sometimes, you know, or whatever, you know, whatever it is, it's okay. It's human. It's very human. So it's okay. There's that compassion. So I'm talking about this as the parent. So, you know, I understand that it feels hard. We just have to keep going. You know, I understand that, you know, people are having to wear masks right now, and maybe not outside, but if that's a fear that comes up, then, you know, but we'll be okay. We'll maintain our distance. It's okay. And we say we, you know, our whole, all those different voices are the we that is I, right? The we that is you. And listen to it. Try not to judge. Comfort yourself in healthy ways. Breathe with the emotion. Just let it be. Like if a 2-year-old were having a meltdown, you know, because they're too tired, or we as a parent want them to do something that they don't want to do, we don't just give up and give in to them. I mean, I hope not. And we also don't walk away and just say, hey, kid, you're on your own. We take them, we understand. There's nothing we can do because they're in their emotional brain, and they're not going to do anything else. We just hold them and just wait until they're calm, and then we move on our way. And that's really how we need to look at our emotions, is that, okay, my inner 2-year-old is having a meltdown right now and really wants to sit and drink coffee and not go outside. Okay, 2-year-old, thank you for sharing. I get it. We'll have coffee when we come home. Let's go outside. And that, you know, it's simple. It's a simple formula. It's a simple process. It's not always easy, right? But we just keep working at it. And anything worth working for isn't easy, right? Isn't that what they say? All right. All right. So yeah, you can do fun things, like somebody says they name their walks. So they're walking for someone that they're supporting, and you know, that's really wonderful. But you know, there's different ways you can work with work with what comes up, and you can have fun with it, and you can be creative with it as well. So are there any questions about that? I actually looked up the statement online. I Googled it, and nobody has said this. So feel free to let it go viral. Perseverance is the new motivation. Lynn Barrette, thank you very much. Anyway, so I'm open to questions, and then we're going to have a little meditation time around, a little meditation process, I want to say, around what we're talking about tonight, about our commitment to ourselves, and you know, getting in touch with what that feels like. Do a little positive brain spotting around it. All right, no questions, so we will go ahead. This was a picture that I took when I was in India earlier this year. It was this beautiful overhang, just gorgeous. All right, so I invite you to get comfortable in your chairs then. Chair, couch, wherever you're sitting. And think about your commitment to yourself right now, your commitment for expansion, your commitment for getting something done, your commitment to change a behavior, anything else, something that you want to pull into your life, attract into your life. I invite you to really picture that goal. And now picture yourself already having accomplished it. What will that feel like? What does it look like in your world to have that done, have that accomplished? What does it feel like in your body to accomplish that? And bring all your senses into it. What does it sound like? What does it smell like? However, you can really allow yourself to embody that accomplishment. Now I'd like for you to open your eyes if they were closed, and just scan left to right or right to left slowly, and see if you can find the eye position where those feelings of accomplishment feel the strongest. Just scan back and forth until you can feel that. Maybe go up and down, maybe it's higher or lower than eye level. Then let your eyes rest there. Just brain spotting on that which we want to magnify within ourselves. We want to really help reinforce those neural connections, if you will, that energetic connection to that accomplishment. let yourself hang out there and see what shows up. What might be likely to show up is the resistance at some point. And just notice that. Notice where the resistance shows up in your body. But let your attention stay on that accomplishment eye position. Notice any voices that are talking from that resistance place or places. Just make note of it and let it keep going, up and out. And if you don't have any resistance up, then just let yourself marinate in that accomplishment sense, marinate in the joy around that, the strength, the empowerment. And check in again with your goal and the accomplishment of it and those sensations. Feel that success in every cell of your body. Shining, vibrating, enlivening. And I invite you to feel or notice any love and compassion you feel as you take notice of the resistance. It's there to support you even when it feels like it's not. It's there to grow you. Paramahamsa Yogananda was an Eastern yogi who moved to the US to teach a type of yoga to Westerners. And one of my favorite quotes by him is, "If you wrestle with a stronger wrestler, you will get stronger. If you wrestle with a weaker wrestler, you will get weaker." So wrestling with that resistance within us helps us stronger, helps us become stronger within ourselves, and helps us build that inner strength, empowerment. Some people call it grit. It's a word that was coined for a while. It feels like a stronger wrestler, but when we examine it a little bit, there's hardly anything there at all. So the biggest challenge is just embracing the change that moving through resistance will bring. A new inner status quo, which will lead to our next adventure into a new commitment and new growth. So take a deep breath. Breathing in that reward of the accomplishment of your goal. Feel the knowingness that you can do it, no matter what. When you're ready, blink your eyes a little bit. Feel yourself in your chair. And take what you wrote down, your commitment, your goals, your steps to take towards it. And let right now be that new beginning, that first motivation of your commitment to yourself. And have fun with that this week. I think, I don't think I'm going to share right now what we're going to talk about next week, just in case it changes between now and Friday when I send out the email. But have a wonderful week. Enjoy our warming weather and the flowers, and Feel free to email me if there's anything that you feel would be helpful as we're working with the process. We're a little bit more detailed today. And we'll just work with whatever we need to along the way. So anyway, thank you for coming tonight, and I always enjoy seeing your faces in between my slides, and have a wonderful week.